Hi, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Guthrie.
And we today are talking about commitment in its various forms. I think people probably, when they hear commitment, they're probably thinking about relationships.
Which is not what we mean.
Not what you mean.
No. No. It's commitment to a product or a service. How do you get people to, you have a product or service, right? You have software or something that you provide to people. How do you get them or to commit to it, or at least make it more likely that they'll commit to it? Meaning, I think we spend a lot of time and energy, at least people who are in marketing, trying to get people to take that first initial step, right? Of, knowing that the product exists and then checking it out and then maybe purchasing it, right? But how do you really get people to commit to it rather than just checking it out?
I have a question.
Yeah?
What's the difference between commitment and loyalty?
Oh, commitment and loyalty. In terms of products and services, huh? Boy, nobody's asked me that question before. I think they're similar. I guess to me, if I had to, and I'm just making this up, this is the Susan definition. Commitment would be more of an initial, I'm going beyond just checking it out. I actually want to have a relationship with this product or service. And loyalty is I'm sticking with it through thick and thin, no matter what. There's other newer things out there, but I'm not even going to check them out because I'm loyal to this particular product or this particular brand. You could argue with that. You could say they're the same thing, but I'm talking about commitment more in terms of I've checked something out, and now I'm going to make the decision to go with it. I'm going to really commit to it being my tool for that, class of products or services. Let's use a specific example. So we recently switched, and I won't name names, but we recently switched our CRM software, our customer relationship management software, right? And so we had one, and we've done this switch now. This is the third. Well, this is even the fourth switch because I had switched once before you came on board to the company. Mm-hmm. Since you came on board, then we switched. We had one when you came on. We switched to another one. We switched to another one, and we switched to another one. But I had a different one. Four, but probably four. That's a lot of switches. So I wouldn't say that we're particularly loyal so far to any of these, but we did commit for quite a long time to each of them, right? And then we gave up that commitment and moved on. But it does sound like relationships, doesn't it? But I want to talk about how do you get people to even get to that stage where they've gone beyond checking it out and they actually want to work with the product or work with the service or work with your brand. Okay. All right.
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's useful.
All right. So, because I like to give you a hard time and ask you questions when you don't know I'm going to, I'll do that. So I want you to think about this last CRM that we committed to. All right.
Yep.
And I want you to think about, what do you have any idea? Do you have any conscious thoughts here about, because you were checking out a lot of software while we were looking, as I recall, you were checking out this one and that one and this one and that one. So what made you decide? Do you know what happened that made you commit?
Oh, that was so tough. I remember, so we were looking for a better, cheaper CRM. The short story is that we wanted to do function A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And there was a CRM that did A really well, and a CRM that did B really well, and a CRM that did C really well. And we found, but we wanted it all in one place, which makes sense.
But we also didn't want to pay a lot of money. We're such a typical customer.
Okay, so function C was maybe not be expensive. For example, we wanted these, we wanted all this stuff.
Okay.
And there was an option that did A, B, and C. They did it all, but not very well.
Yeah.
On any particular one. And so we did that for a while, but it didn't get better. So instead, it decided that it would be cheaper and better to have a CRM that did function A and a different program to do function B, and like a different program. So breaking it up in a way I didn't want to, but would be much better in each individual instance and also much cheaper.
Yeah.
So I had kind of figured out function C, which was to-do lists and tasks. We still needed B and A, and so I had found a function B that I really liked, and so I just needed my function B and my function A to at least kind of work together. So function A would be your traditional CRM, and I was scouring the map for 1,000 different times. I finally picked one that had a very good interface. It was very simple because the only thing it needed to do was function A.
Yeah.
It didn't need all the bells and whistles. So I think I did it unconsciously, but I was just trying to find whatever thing did function A the best. Okay. Very simple, very straightforward. Why can't we say what CRM we're using?
You can say.
So we ended up using Pipedrive, which is basically I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like a Kanban inspired.
Oh goodness, I don't know. It's. I mean, the conceptual model. If we talked about mental models and conceptual models, we probably should do an episode on that.
I think we did.
Anyway, the conceptual model of all of these different products is so different. Anyway, it's just different. But yeah. So, but I have a question for you. Like, what made you you found out about Pipedrive, right? And you thought, oh, this might work.
Yeah,
right?
And I was doing a bunch of other trials with a bunch of other different programs.
All right, so talk about the trials. What were the trials like? What does that mean? You were doing trials?
Well, I wanted to sync our email, and so I was just trying to put in a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, how were you doing trials? Did they have like free trials?
Yeah.
Did they all have free trials?
Yeah, everyone has a free trial.
And so when you would do a free trial, what would you, like, how much data would you put in?
What do you mean data? I would. First of all, I wasn't going to put in the data.
You weren't going to put in any data?
No, they all have abilities to import it in various different ways.
Okay, so how are you trying it out?
You could, just to see what it was like if I created, an opportunity and put it in and create a contact, and how easy was it to do the forms. And I wouldn't say we have custom stuff we need, but we have a couple fields that it's nice to be able to segment, like the type of work that it is.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Just kind of seeing how it all fit together.
Okay. And so you did that, and then you thought, okay, this one works pretty well. Pipedrive worked pretty well. Yeah,
it was simple and well designed. A lot of the other CRMs are rather clunky.
Yeah.
Just because they were built on older frameworks.
Yeah.
And
now I have
Pipedrive was built on modern HTML frameworks. Yeah.
So the previous one we had, how much did I use it versus you used it in terms of the CRM part?
Yeah, you never used it.
The previous one, yeah.
Yeah, it was you were walking in the woods.
Yeah. And then what about the new one?
TBD.
Well, I disagree with you. I mean, I actually go into it all the time.
Define all the time.
More than once a week?
Okay, well that's
and
pretty
I
good.
enter things into it, and I
All right,
I
well,
look things
you know.
up in it. You probably aren't aware of that.
I'll count that as a win then.
Okay, and you're going to say I probably do that more than the other one because it's easier.
I'm gonna say the user interface is better. You're more comfortable with it, and there are just so like the thing about Pipedrive that makes it, interesting is as I just pull it up here quickly. There's
By the way,
not
Pipedrive is not a sponsor, and they're not paying us money to say these things, right?
No. So when you go there, the main screen is the Pipedrive, which is what the name comes from.
Yeah.
And so we just have three, like it's all of our opportunities in 3 buckets graphically. That's the main page. And then the only options are deals, mail, which we never use, activities, which we also don't use, contacts and statistics, which we don't use. So literally your only options when you get there are to look at the current opportunities and either click on deals to create a new deal or contacts to create a new contact. There is nowhere else to go. So it's it's not overwhelming to you, which is why I think you use it more.
That's one reason. So, let's hear it for having a simpler, better user interface. Yay! Yeah, it's not overwhelming. It's simple. There's not a gazillion things you can do. There's only a few, which happen to be the few we are interested in. And so I agree with you. That's one reason why I use it more. But there's another reason. Do you remember what happened when we were in Malmo, Sweden?
I remember lots of things in Malmo.
Do you remember anything around Pipedrive while we were in Malmo, Sweden? Just this past
Yeah,
June?
they're from somewhere, aren't they?
Who?
Pipedrive?
Nope. That's not it.
I thought they were from something.
No. We had some spare time in Malmo before we were coming from Stockholm and Varberg, and then we were headed to Paris, and we had a day or two extra. And so we, and I needed to
they're from
rest
Estonia.
up.
Sorry.
Who is?
Pipedrive.
Seriously? I didn't
Yeah,
even know
they have
that.
they have an office in New York, but
How cool is that? I didn't know that.
Well, that's not. I knew that. I knew there was some sort of.
Oh.
I mean, that's why their whole thing is so slick, because it's kind of that.
Because it's from Estonia?
Yeah, that kind of slick. It's not Nordic, but it's kind of Baltic Sea, a very classic, efficient design style.
That's pretty funny. I wonder if that's true.
Of course it's true. I use it. I was not surprised.
Well, we had some extra time, and
Shout out
so
to Estonia.
you kind of forced me to do. We had some work we had to do for setup and going through old things. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
With Pipedrive, we had to go through old files and clean them up and enter new things. And so we took, I don't know, how many hours? It was probably like over the course of 2 days, maybe 8 hours or so.
Mm-hmm.
To go through and do that. And that did a couple things. One thing that it did was it gave me lots of time, really concentrated time using it and learning it. I think one of the problems with commitment to products like this is, typically, especially with a product like this, and I think this happens a lot with a lot of software, you need it and you want it, but you don't take the time to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't go to a class, and you don't take go through all the tutorials, if there are even any tutorials, right? And so you never really learn it thoroughly, and so it's always a little uncomfortable. It never feels like you have a relationship with this product. But because of the situation, and we sat down, and I used it for hours at a time, and had to figure out how to do this, how to do that. I got comfortable with the interface, so that's one thing. Now, granted, it does have, I think, a much better user experience and user interface than a lot of products in this area, so that helped. But also the work that we were doing during those 8 hours or whatever it was not always easy. It was arduous. I was getting tired of it. I'm sure I was doing many of my famous sighs.
There's a lot of sighing. I should just note the switching from one platform to another was fairly painless, but it's because we needed to update. We had bad data in there anyways. It just made the most sense to go through to import everything, but then go through manually and update everything.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of man hours, I guess we'll say.
Yeah, but one of the things we know about commitment is that if you have to put time and energy into something, and especially time and energy that's not necessarily easy or fun, it's actually kind of difficult or arduous, that actually increases your commitment to the thing. So the combination of, learning it because I had to go do all this stuff, plus doing the stuff which wasn't necessarily a piece of cake and wasn't necessarily always fun, right? That combination, actually the end result was I created a solid relationship with Pipedrive. So I have a relationship with Pipedrive now. I know this probably sounds silly to people, but honestly, this is what happens. And so when I think about Pipedrive, or when I think, I need to look something up, I happily bring up Pipedrive to look it up. As though I were, picking up the phone and calling a friend. I can tell you that the previous product we had, I was never happy going in and doing anything with that product. And part of it was the user interface, but part of it was that I never really got a good relationship with that product. And I never really went through, the kind of arduous, and the thing is, you have to go through the arduous process, but you have to come out of it successful. You can't just go through an arduous process and then but it never works. Okay, that will not build a good relationship. But if you put time and energy, if you invest time and energy into it, and you have a successful relationship, a successful outcome from that, then you are building the successful relationship. And you did the same thing. You had an even more arduous process, didn't you? That went on for like days and days when you were doing your initial cleanup.
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
weeks.
you had much more than me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it worked at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that should mean that you have a more solid relationship with Pipedrive than you did with the previous product. And I don't think you had a good relationship with the previous one either. Like, I remember when we had to do something, you were like, you would say to me, you go do it. I don't want to go in there. Yeah. I mean, you didn't even want to have a relationship.
Well, it was, there's too much to do. And we don't have enough staff to really have, keep everything super current and have someone in it every day, every hour, like living in it. Yeah. To keep everything really nice.
But I do, you may not know this, but I do periodically go into Pipedrive and update stuff. It's probably not totally updated right now. I need to do it again, but I do it more often. So one of the mistakes that I think, so just recently I was, that I compose music. Which you do too.
Yes.
And we both compose music. Not together. We don't do it together. But I was looking for some software to do a particular thing that I want to do. And I won't go into all the details of it. It has to do with jazz chords and blah, blah, blah. But I was looking for a product, willing to pay for a product. I mean, of course, free would be wonderful, but I'll pay for it if it does what I want it to do. And there's a handful of products that I could consider. So I was interested. This is what got me thinking about this, because some of them didn't have a trial at all, right? So you could watch a demo, right? You could read about it. Maybe there was a little demo tutorial movie at the website, right, that you could watch about how it works. But you couldn't try it out on your own. And, we know that the trials of a product are really important for a couple of reasons. One is what we were just talking about, because you want to have the experience of investing time and energy and putting your information in, but also because of reciprocity, right? Which I think we've maybe talked about before. If you give me something free, I feel like you've done me a favor, and then I'll be more likely to do you a favor in return. So if you let me download your product and try it out, I'll be more likely to buy it after that if you ask me to. But some of the products didn't have a trial, like you couldn't try them out. And so it's really hard to know what it's really going to be like. So I wasn't committing to those, right? And then there was this one product that let you try it out. You could download it and try it out for 2 weeks. And now, have you had the experience, Guthrie, where they let you do that, but then they don't give you all the features and functionality?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a problem.
It depends.
Depends.
If it's feature. So like we use Asana for our task scheduling, and they have an Asana Premium, and so there are features. If you did like the free trial, for example, there are features you couldn't see, but they're features we don't use.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Right. But if it's a feature that you're really interested in, but it's not active in the trial, that's kind of a bummer. So what happens, so I want to talk for a minute about because if any of the people who are listening, have products and services, and they've thought about, the right way and the wrong way to do a free trial, here's some tips. So first of all, you should have a free trial. And secondly, hopefully you know your audience well enough to know which features and functionality are most important to most people, and you don't want to hide those from the trial. You want them to, be able to use everything in the trial, or at least everything you think is what they're really interested in. Then the next thing that happened, and I think this is a mistake that a lot of product managers make, or product marketers, is it was a 14-day trial. Now that sounds very generous, doesn't it? Like, what's wrong with a 14-day trial?
I mean, I don't think that's enough time.
It's really not enough time, and this,
Yeah.
What happens is you've got someone looking for something, and they look around and they identify something they're interested in, and they download the trial, and then life comes in, right? And they get busy, and they didn't get a chance. Sometimes I think when you're a product manager or in charge of marketing a product, you're to you, the product is everything, and you just assume it is to everyone else, right? And it's like, if you download it, you're going to use it right away, It's like, no, not necessarily. And that's what happened to me with this music software. I downloaded it. I was kind of interested in it. I did try it out a little bit right then. I had, like a spare hour or two. It was on the weekend. And so I tried it out right then. But then, I got busy and I couldn't finish trying it out. And when I went back, like on day 15, it's like, okay, I never did pick a software. I'm going to go back and finish that trial and trying it out and see if I want to buy this one. Of course, now it won't work. The trial period is gone. And if I tried to start the trial up again, it wouldn't let me. Whatever the technology is that I tried uninstalling it from the computer and getting the trial again. No. I tried uninstalling from the computer and using a different email. No. And I wasn't trying to game the system. I was just trying to, finish my trial, which, according to them, no, I had my 14 days and that was it. And I was thinking about that afterwards because it's likely that I would have bought this product, but, I didn't get a chance to fully try it out. And now what do I do, right? I mean, I guess I can buy it now, but I'm not sure it's what I want.
Sure.
So there's a case where they're probably going to lose a customer because they didn't give me enough time to commit to it. So I didn't get to that commitment point because I didn't have enough time. And the other thing that's interesting about that is, when I had some more time and I went back to investigate software, I was looking at some of their competitors, and then I thought, yeah, but I put that one song in. I should go back and, work on that one song, right? So I had put in one of my songs. I had put work in to, do it in that software, and so I did have an initial commitment started, but I was never able to solidify or cement that commitment. So if you're going to have a free trial, you have to let people have it long enough that they really have a chance to commit. And I think a much better way to do a trial instead of time is to do it by, number, right? There's a competitive product for this one that lets you have a trial for as long as you want, but you can only do 5 songs, right? Sure. And 5 songs is, if you're really using the product, 5 songs won't be enough. You're going to want to do a lot more than 5 songs. But at least, I can take a month to do the 5 songs or 2 months if I need to. And that's enough to get, time and commitment and put it all in. And once it's in there, you're going to be reluctant to start all over with something else. The something else is going to have to be really good because you've already committed to this one.
Right.
So, those are all ways to build commitment. And then there's one other thing that I don't know that people always think about with commitment. So about ratings and reviews, right? Product ratings and reviews and testimonials and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
And I think we talked I think we talked about social validation when we did our segment on the need to belong. So the idea that, especially if we're uncertain, we look to other people to see what they're doing. And that's one reason why ratings and reviews are so powerful, that if we're thinking about buying something, we want to hear what other people have to say about it. But there's an interesting thing about ratings and reviews that a lot of people don't realize. Not only is it useful to you if as a product owner or a brand manager to have people write ratings and reviews, assuming they're positive, because it influences other people. When someone leaves a rating or review that's positive, it cements the commitment to the product because it's a way of publicly saying, I like this product. And once you have publicly stated that you like the product, it increases your commitment. So if you really want, a really good thing to do is figure out how to encourage people to leave a review or a rating for a product. As far as I know, have we ever heard from Pipe Drive asking them to rate or give a testimonial or anything?
Probably. I don't know. There's a lot of emails that
really? Because I
away.
Read them, but maybe I'm not getting them.
Yeah,
I don't remember getting one. Maybe we did.
We also have not been customers for very long.
That's true. It's just been a couple months.
Yeah.
But that would be you know, so pipe drive folks, if you're listening to this, right around now would be a good time to, send an email, see if people like it. And then, it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't even have to be a rating or review. So you know how they'll send you a survey and ask you to rate the product? Even just rating it in a survey that goes back to the company is a way of making a public statement. I mean, it's not a public statement, meaning that it's going out to the world, but it's public in that it's going past you. It's going back to the company. So I assume that people use surveys to get real data to see if people like their product or service and see what features they like and so on. And I have a mixed relationship with surveys, which we could probably talk about. But if you, the other positive thing you get out of doing a survey is it gets people to, it strengthens the commitment to the product and to the brand when they fill a survey out. So you want people filling out surveys, not just so you can get the data, but to strengthen the commitment to your product. And I really don't know how much people know that about surveys and commitment. So there's some really interesting research about commitment and about if you this goes back to that behavioral science stuff. And who did this work? I don't have this at the tip of my tongue or head or fingers. I think it was Ash. I may have to look this up. Did the research where he had people estimate the length of a line. I think that's what this was. I may make you talk about something while I go look this up. And you had to, and you estimated how long the line was, and he would show you a line, right? And is it 1 inch, 2 inches, 4 inches? And he would have people estimate the line, and he varied this a million ways. I think it's the same series of studies where he purposely had other people like estimating it incorrectly, like saying it was 5 inches when it was obviously only an inch long, to see if that would affect. So only one person is really in the study and everybody else is a Confederate. But what he did was he found that if people, sometimes he would just ask them to say how long the line was. Sometimes they had to write down how long the line was. Sometimes they had to write down how long the line was and sign their name and hand in the piece of paper.
Right.
Sometimes they just wrote down how long the line was and signed their name, but they didn't hand in the piece of paper. And he was trying to see in which case would people be more likely to stick with their answer. And what he found was that when people wrote down the length of the line and signed it with their signature, that was the highest level of commitment. So writing it down gave a higher level than just thinking it and saying out loud. Writing it down and signing it was even more commitment to the answer. And I think writing down and signing it and handing it in was maybe not much better. So it was the writing and then the writing and signing that made people more committed. So, if you can get people to write things down, that seems to solidify the commitment, which is, that's interesting too, because we know there's I think you and I have talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about it on a podcast, but there's a difference in the way the brain processes information if you type something versus if you write it in longhand.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and I am skeptical.
And that's because you hate writing in longhand.
I think it would still work for me, but with younger generations that never write anything by hand, I think their brains are wired differently. Just a speculation. I don't
That's
have any
a
research
really
on
interesting idea.
it. Yeah, but obviously, like it makes sense that in your formative youth, when you were learning how to process information, you wrote it first, so you'd have the strongest connection of remembrance when you write, because there's less steps. But if you grew up naturally using typing things or using texting on a phone,
we're going to have to find out if anybody's done research on this.
Whoop, whoop.
Because what we do know is that
It's tough because you'd have to find people who are like 12.
Yeah, well, there are people who are 12 that we could find. But yeah, because if you look at, brain activity when someone is typing or talking, that was, let's just say typing, because talking would be different, because that, verbalizing, speaking out loud involves different parts of the brain. But typing versus writing out in longhand, we see that there is a difference in brain activity. Now, obviously, right, the motion is different, right? Sitting there and typing with your fingers is different than moving your whole hand. But the brain activity differences are not just from the motion differences. The information is being stored differently in memory if it's being written out by hand than if it's being typed. And that's a really good question you bring up. Is it because, that's the way you initially communicated written information was by writing, right? Not by typing for many people, right? But for younger generations, that may not be true. They may not have ever done much in, quote, longhand, unquote. But I don't know. I'm curious now about this because there's also research that shows that, how some languages have a much more pictorial aspect to them.
Yes, that would be the Chinese, the Japanese, things that are words that are written basically in pictures instead of the standard kind of numerical characters.
Right. So there's differences in brain activity for people who write in those languages rather than the characters that we're used to in English, because there's more of a fluid hand and arm movement. So I don't know if it still may affect younger people who perhaps didn't do much longhand, but you could teach them longhand. Like if you force them to, let's say that you ask them to write about an event that happened to them, or you ask them to write down their goals for the next 6 months or something, and you ask them to do it in longhand versus typing. Even if they didn't grow up with longhand, I'm going to guess they're still going to process the information differently, because I think it has to do with the movement of the arm and the hand. But I could be totally wrong on that. So if you want to make use of this idea of people commit more if they write longhand, you better hurry up and do it now, because maybe it won't work with younger
if you think about it, the idea of writing longhand is...
You think that's obsolete?
Well, I do. It's an expression. You have an expression in your brain, and then you have to turn that expression into abstract thought, and then into words, and then into letters,
into a picture,
and then turn that into a specific series of arm motions.
But see, that's why you're processing it differently. There's more encoding going on. There's more encoding.
It's like, typing is more efficient because the muscle memory is just exactly where you're hitting, instead of like if you think of a cursive A, right? It's a much more
it's a different muscle memory
stroke.
It is.
But it's very different.
Okay, but see, this goes back to what we were talking about before. When it's harder, when you have to put more effort into it, then you value it more. So you might be more committed to whatever it is that you're writing down. I agree that it's hard to get people to do things in longhand. I mean, I know about the research about longhand versus typing. And so when I do these, we've talked in another podcast episodes about the power of self-stories. We had Timothy Wilson on, and we talked about self-stories. And so one of the things I periodically do is I write out my current self-story, and then I write, this is like my kind of personal therapy, self-help, personal growth, one of those things I do. I'll write out my current self-story, and then I'll rewrite the story, writing a new story that incorporates some of the things I want to work on, some of the changes I want to make in my life. And I try really hard to do this in longhand, because I know that if I do it in longhand, it's going to have a bigger effect, and I'll be more committed to the new story. But it's really hard because I hate writing longhand. My handwriting is bad, and it's just, I'm so much faster on the keyboard. So, but I try and force myself to do it. I'm not always successful in doing that.
Sure. Though I find that you're much more successful at notes when you take notes by hand. My question is, will that be the same if you take notes on a computer using like an ink pen?
Yes. So yeah, I do. I'm very aware of the difference in thought process between my longhand writing and my typing. And so, for instance, if we're on a phone call with a client, or if we're meeting in person with a client, I much prefer to take longhand notes. Partially because I think if you're on the phone and they can hear you typing, I think that's distracting. And I always tell people, if you hear me typing, I'm not sending emails. It's because I'm taking notes. And sometimes I'll mute, but that's just, pain to mute on, off, on, off. And then if I'm in person with them and, I have my laptop with me, it's still kind of annoying and distracting because, there's something about if you're typing and you not maintaining, even if you're maintaining eye contact, because I can type without looking at my hands at all. So I can maintain eye contact with you while I'm typing, but it's still kind of weird, right? It's like because someone's looking at you and they're typing at the same time. So I much prefer to take notes by hand. I think it makes for a better interaction. But my handwriting's bad, and so I'd rather. And then you have to type it all up afterwards. So yeah, I'm interested in. I think my guess is going to be, and we just got these laptops that fold over, and I have the pen. I have to learn how to use this. We haven't tried this yet, and I really want to try it. I'm going to say that, we'll see. I'll try it and I'll let you know. I'm going to say that the experience will be like writing longhand because you're still making the hand and arm movements. So,
Right.
Now, supposedly, will that take my longhand and turn it into words? They won't be able to read my handwriting. No, just that it'll store it for me so I don't have to retype it. Is that the idea? Yeah, that's the idea.
It's there's a lot of stuff it can do.
Yeah, I want
There's
to try
a new
that out.
Windows update that's coming out in October that'll have a lot more features when it comes to writing in Windows.
I shouldn't even try it yet?
Go ahead and try it. I don't know why I would say don't try it. I'm just saying it's gonna, what it can and can't do is getting better all the time. That's all I'm saying.
It'll still be arduous for me rather than typing. Yeah.
I think so. I don't know.
But I should try it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess I'd like to get to the point where I can just think about things and the words appear on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. So okay, so we should.
Are we straying?
got a little far afield. We should get back.
All right, get back to commitment, right?
Commitment. Yeah.
All right. Well, so do you have any questions on that, or would you, if you were coming out with a new product, would you have any other suggestions about what one might do to get you to commit, or do you have any other ideas about times when you have or have not committed to a new product or service?
How strong is commitment? Like is there, once you've committed, is it like you're committed now, or is there like gradients of commitment?
That's a good question, Guthrie.
Yeah.
I think of commitment. I think there are some gradients of commitment, but basically I think of commitment as, a binary state. I'm not committed, and then I am. I cross a threshold, and then I'm committed. Now, certainly, and I guess it's possible I'm really committed versus I'm just a little bit committed. I guess that's possible, but I think of it more as, let's put it this way. I think it's a threshold. You're either committed or you're not. I think there is a gradient if we're talking about how long the commitment lasts or how easy it is to loosen the commitment. Okay? So, for instance, you could say, I guess, that we had committed to one of those other previous CRMs that we used, but
Sure.
they seemed, it didn't seem like that was a particularly strong commitment because it was not that hard to get us to shake it, right? And give up and start looking for something new and, be interested in a new product or service. So I guess in that, I guess I'm being contradictory and saying it's a threshold, but there are different levels to it.
Yeah, sure.
But
okay.
I think there is a threshold in terms of I'm committing, I'm taking action, I'm moving forward, I'm choosing this right now. I think that is a go no go state. But how easily you can get someone to give up on it or commit to something new, that might vary.
Interesting.
And I think I think that you asked about loyalty. Basically, what I think happens is once you've committed to a product or service or a brand, that commitment is tested over time in a variety of ways. And so sometimes you stick with it. The question comes up again, right? Essentially, are you still committed to this? Yes, no, right? And if you answer yes, then the answer is yes, and you just keep going. But if the answer is, well, I'm not sure, or no, I'm not, then you're starting the process of thinking about a change. I'm thinking about my personal shift from PCs to Apple back to PCs, right? Right? And so, which is a,
it's a story in and of itself, right?
Right. And then it's a very long time period that went over. And for a very, very long time, I wouldn't even consider the switch. It was like, nope, not interested in talking about it, not interested in checking things out, right? So I think there's, then you reach, there's something that happens, and that something can be all kinds of things, right? It can be new products, it can be a change in your self-story, it can, right? I mean, there's like so many factors, right? But there can be something that shakens that or loosens that commitment, and then at that point, the next time you ask yourself or someone asks you, right?
Right.
How committed are you to sticking? I mean, I believe that's, you you've asked me that question about many things about technology, right? How
Right.
committed are you to sticking with, we might be talking about a new computer or something, and you'll say to me, how committed are you to sticking with Apple on this, right? You're asking me. And there have been times when
And
I've
you don't
said,
know. You don't have an answer sometimes.
sometimes I do know. Sometimes I say, I'm not, I can't imagine a situation, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll say, well, right? And then you move in stealthily to get that switch to happen.
You're going to blame me on this?
Always. So I think there are levels of strength of lasting with the commitment, but I still think the commitment is either a go, no go.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
All right. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. So all of you product managers and you music software out there, please change your trials. Give me a chance to commit. Have a trial period. Don't base it on time. Let it go a very long time or base it on something besides time. And you'll find that people are more likely to commit and get them to input their own information.
There you go.
So that they have to do some arduous work so that they will become committed. Make them work. Make them work. Now, you've seen this, though. Guthrie, I wanted to ask you, because I know you play games, right?
That is very true.
Like video games and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure.
Online games?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we've talked about gamification and that kind of thing before, but do you feel like if a game is really, tricky and you have to really work at it, that you like it more?
Sure. There are. I mean, there's a lot of famous examples of this. There's a game called Dark Souls, which I don't play, but I know people who do, and it's like calling card is that it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like so it's there's these series of bosses, and basically to like defeat a boss you have to like each boss you wouldn't guess like you have to go, you duck under and you go right and you run over here, and then you have to the boss is only vulnerable on like his left leg, and then you have to
don't know what these
duck
rules
and dive are. And and so the whole I think it's Dark Souls, maybe I think it is. Anyways, And so it's really hard, right? And so to get past one thing, and usually the expectation is that it takes dozens of tries. Like it's just not something that you can just roll through. And so it would be so hard people would quit, except that people are like their expectations are set. So it's more of like a puzzle than a frustrating whatever. And then the most famous example is multiplayer online games do you know the MMR system?
No.
There's a bunch of different ways. It basically gives you a ranking of how good you are relative to all the other players. And so when you queue up for a game, it of course queues you up with players of your rank. Mm-hmm. And if you are better than all the other players, you'll move up and you'll eventually hit harder players. And then you'll move back down, right? Until it finds exactly what level you're at the moment. So it's naturally, and that's because it's online, and you don't want really good players going against really bad players. But there's a lot of ways that kind of games naturally balance a little bit.
Yeah. So, on the one hand, I don't want to tell people to create interfaces that are hard to use. But on the other hand, I want people to think about, what are the goals, and maybe it needs to be, maybe you got to have people work at it. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
All right, I think
agree.
that's it.
Okay.
Guthrie, thanks a lot.
Woo.
And I think it's time to. I'll when we hang up, I'll go update some stuff in Pipedrive.
Yeah, please do.
If people want to reach us, what should they do?
info at the teamw.com.
And please share our, if you like our podcast, share it with others, talk about it, let people know, rate it, ratings and reviews. Become committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
That'll help us out too. All right. Thanks, Guthrie.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.